Drunk tourist punches waitress in the butt and is stabbed in Los Angeles bar. You just crossed the wrong line, amigo. The words were still hanging in the air when the knife flashed. It was a busy Friday night in a packed Los Angeles bar, neon lights, music thumping, and a waitress just trying to make it through her shift. Then, a drunk tourist decided to get handsy. One punch to the wrong place. 1 second too long. By the time the crowd realized what had happened, the night had already turned bloody. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Real Father Story. The night that went sideways. The bar on Sunset was alive the way only LA bars get alive, music thumping just loud enough to blur bad decisions. The smell of fried food clinging to every breath, and a Friday night crowd that came for the noise as much as the drinks. Maya, the waitress, was in hour 6 of a double shift. Her tray was steady. Her smile practiced the kind you wear when your feet hurt, but the tips are good. At the far end of the counter, a group of tourists was working through their third pitcher of margaritas. They were loud, sloppy, and already leaning too far into personal space with anyone who passed. Maya made her way past them, balancing 3 plates on one arm. One of the men, tall, sunburnt, wearing a Hawaiian shirt, leaned out into her path. His words slurred, his grin crooked. "You forgot my number, sweetheart." She kept moving. "I think you forgot your manners." The group laughed, but it wasn't friendly. The man's hand shot out not to grab her arm, but to deliver a sharp, open-handed smack to her backside. The sound cut through the music. Every head within 2 tables turned. Maya stopped, set the plates down, turned slowly, eyes locked on his. The man leaned back in his chair, smirking like it was all a joke. What can't take a compliment? Before Maya could answer, a barback named Luis stepped out from the kitchen doorway. He'd seen enough. "Apologize," he said, voice low. The tourist laughed again, louder this time. Or what? What happened next didn't feel slow, but later Maya would remember every detail: the shove, the table tipping, the glint of something in Luis's hand as the crowd surged forward. And by the time anyone pulled them apart, blood was already on the floor. Blood on the floor. The Hawaiian shirt guy was doubled over, clutching his side, his laughter replaced by a raw, guttural groan. A thin line of red was already soaking through the fabric, blooming fast. Luis stood frozen, chest heaving, the small folding knife still in his hand. The bar's neon washed his face in blue and pink, calm, almost too calm, like he'd already accepted what came next. Maya's voice broke through. "Luis, what did you do?" But she knew. Everyone knew. The bar's soundtrack had cut off mid-song, replaced by the sound of chairs scraping back glass, tipping over, and a woman screaming near the door. The tourists' friends surged toward Luis, but 2 bouncers intercepted them, shoving them back into their table. One of them barked toward the bar, call 911. Maya was already on her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she almost dropped it. Los Angeles Police. The dispatcher answered. "There's been a stabbing at..." She started giving the address, but her eyes never left Luis. He wasn't running, wasn't fighting. He just stood there, knife hanging at his side, eyes locked on the bleeding man, like nothing else existed. The bartender, a wiry man named Vince, stepped in, gripping Luis by the wrist. "Give it to me," he said. Luis hesitated, then handed over the knife without a word. The sirens came fast, cutting through the warm night air outside. Through the bar's front windows, the flashing red and blue lit up the street. The wounded tourist was on the floor now, one of his friends pressing a wad of bar towels to the wound, his voice shaking as he cursed in 2 languages. When the LAPD officers came in, weapons drawn, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. "Which one?" the lead officer demanded. Nobody spoke until Maya's voice came soft, but clear. He's right there. She wasn't sure if she'd saved Luis or sealed his fate. And just as the cuffs clicked shut, one of the tourist's friends pointed at Maya and said something that made every cop in the room look her way. The accusation. The tourist's friend, a stocky man with a shaved head, jabbed a finger at Maya's voice, sharp and accented. She told him to do it. I heard her. She said, "Teach him a lesson." Every set of eyes in the room turned to her. Even Luis' hands cuffed behind his back looked over his shoulder. "That's not true," Maya said, her voice trembling more from disbelief than fear. But the lead officer's gaze had shifted. He was sizing her up now, not as a witness, but as a possible suspect. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us," he said, "for questioning." "I was serving tables," she protested. "You all saw what happened." The shaved-head man cut her off, stepping toward the cops. She was mad at him. The tourist. He touched her. She whispered something to the guy with the knife, and then he stabbed him. That's what I saw. It was a lie, a dangerous one. And in the noise and panic of the last few minutes, maybe it was just believable enough to stick. The officers exchanged a look. One of them pulled a small notebook from his vest. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Maya Delgado." Her voice was steadier now, but her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "You're saying you didn't encourage him to stab the victim?" the officer asked. "Of course not. I told him to apologize, that's all." Luis acted on his own. Luis spoke for the first time since the cuffs went on. "She didn't tell me to do anything. This is on me." But the officer just nodded without writing it down. Maya saw the way the pen hovered, the way it paused like Luis's words weren't worth ink. Outside, the sirens had drawn a crowd. Phone cameras pointed at the bar door, ready to catch the violent scene for the internet before the truth could breathe. The lead officer gestured toward the exit. "Ma'am, you can cooperate here, or you can cooperate downtown. Your choice." Maya glanced at Luis as they led him out. He shook his head once slow, deliberate, like he was telling her to keep quiet. But with the victim still alive, and someone now pointing at her, Maya realized this wasn't just about what happened in the bar. It was about who the police wanted to believe. The footage that didn't tell the whole story. The fluorescent lights of the LAPD interview room buzzed faintly, drilling into Maya's skull like a second heartbeat. She sat with her hands clasped on the table, staring at the chipped edge of the formica, while an officer set up a laptop across from her. Detective Harrow, mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, the kind of calm that comes from knowing the room belongs to him, slid into the chair opposite. "We pulled security footage from the bar," he said. "Want to see it?" The video played in grainy color. Maya walking past the tourists, the smack, the turn, the exchange of words. Luis appearing from the kitchen. A few seconds where their faces were close enough to suggest a conversation. Then the sudden shove. The flash of the knife. Harrow froze the frame right before the stabbing. "Looks like you said something to him," he said, evenly, right before he went for the victim. "I told him to stop. That's it. That's not what the victim's friend says. And on mute this," he tapped the screen, "could be anything." Maya leaned forward. "Where's the audio?" Harrow's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. "The system at the bar doesn't record sound, just video." She exhaled sharply. "Convenient." "Maybe," Harrow said. "Or maybe it's just how cheap bars buy cheap cameras. Either way, we've got two witnesses saying you incited this and footage that doesn't clear you. So help me understand. Why should I believe you over them?" Maya's eyes dropped to the table. She could feel the walls closing in, not physically, but in the way the story was being built around her brick by brick. Every second she hesitated made the gap between truth and suspicion wider. Finally, she looked up. "Because you're asking the wrong question." Harrow tilted his head. "Enlighten me." "You're asking what I said to Luis. You should be asking what the victim said to him." For the first time, Harrow didn't have an immediate comeback, but before he could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Another officer stepped in, whispering something in Harrow's ear. His expression barely changed, but Maya caught it, the flicker of surprise. "Stay here," he told her, standing. Through the crack in the door before it shut, she glimpsed a still frame on a different monitor in the hallway. It was the same scene from the bar, but from a completely different angle. And whatever that camera saw, Harrow clearly hadn't planned on showing it to her. The angle. They didn't want her to see Maya sat alone in the interview room, the clock on the wall dragging each second into something heavier. Through the thin walls, muffled voices traded quick, sharp bursts, the kind of tone people used when new evidence didn't fit the story they'd been building. The door opened and Detective Harrow came back in. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. "Do you want to tell me everything before we go further?" he asked. "I already have," Maya said. He studied her for a long moment, then turned the laptop toward her. This came from a private security camera across the street. The bar didn't know it existed. The footage was sharper, the colors more real. It showed the patio outside the big front windows, revealing a partial view into the bar. Through the glass, Maya watched her own ghost move across the frame, then the Hawaiian shirt tourist leaning back in his chair and sliding his hand into his pocket. Harrow paused. The video zoomed in. The image pixelated, but still clear enough, a short silver blade, a folding knife in the tourist's grip, half hidden under the table. Maya's breath caught. He had a knife before Luis ever touched him. "Looks that way," Harrow said. "Problem is, this angle doesn't show the actual stabbing. And without that, all we can prove is that both men had weapons." She shook her head. "No, it proves intent. He wasn't just some drunk idiot, he was ready to hurt someone." Harrow closed the laptop slowly, like the weight of it had doubled. "Maybe. But unless Luis admits he saw the knife, it's just another detail the DA might bury." Maya leaned forward. "So what happens now? You keep pretending the first video is all you have, or you use the one that tells the truth?" Harrow didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, opened the door, and motioned for her to follow. In the hallway, two uniforms were walking Luis past them in cuffs. Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and she saw it, a flicker of something like relief in his face. He had seen the knife. But before she could speak, Harrow stopped her with a quiet warning. "Think very carefully about your next move. That footage, it doesn't just change what happened in the bar. It changes why it happened. And the why might be something neither she nor Luis wanted uncovered." The tourist. Who wasn't? Maya followed Harrow down the corridor, her pulse keeping pace with the echo of their steps. Somewhere behind them, Luis's voice drifted faintly. Not words, just a low hum of conversation, with the uniforms escorting him. They stopped outside an office where a younger detective was hunched over a computer. Harrow leaned in. "Show her." On the screen was a passport photo. Same face, same smirk as the Hawaiian shirt tourist. But the name under it wasn't what she'd seen on his bar tab. Daniel Kovac, Harrow said. Dual national. Bounced between Eastern Europe and Central America for the last 6 years. Officially, he's a travel blogger. Maya frowned. Unofficially, Harrow's eyes hardened. Unofficially, he's suspected of being a courier. Cash diamonds, sometimes documents. We've had him on a watch list, but he always slips away before anyone can prove what he's carrying. She stared at the grainy passport image. So he wasn't just some drunk who got handsy. He was here for something. Exactly, Harrow said. And if your friend Luis knew that, this whole night might not have been as random as it looked. Maya felt the weight of the room shift. Luis wasn't a violent man, not in the years she'd known him at the bar. But tonight, he'd gone from 0 to a blade in seconds. If he'd recognized Kovac, maybe he'd had a reason. Harrow shut the file and turned to her. You want my advice? Stay out of this. Kovac's people aren't going to care if you were just a waitress in the wrong place. But Maya shook her head. If Luis knew who he was, then Luis is in more danger than I am. And if Kovac was here for a drop, whatever he had on him is still out there. Harrow gave her a long look, the kind that measured how far someone was willing to walk into their own ruin. All right, Delgado, but you're not going to like where this leads. Later, as Maya stepped out into the station parking lot, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're asking questions you shouldn't. Meet me at the alley behind the Monarch in 1 hour. Come alone. She stared at the screen, the glow lighting her face in the dark. The Monarch wasn't just a bar. It was a known meeting point for Kovac's kind. And if she went, there was a good chance she wouldn't walk back out. The alley behind the Monarch. The Monarch sat wedged between a boarded-up pawn shop and a neon-lit tattoo parlor, its flickering sign half dead like the clientele inside. Maya slipped down the narrow alley, the smell of stale beer and trash heavy in the warm night air. She kept her phone in her pocket, fingers brushing the edge of the small pepper spray canister she always carried. One dim security light above the back door barely reached the far end of the alley where a lone figure leaned against the wall. It wasn't Luis. It wasn't Harrow. It wasn't anyone she recognized. A woman, mid-30s athletic build, black hoodie zipped to the chin. Hands empty, but eyes sharp. You came, the woman said. Good. Means you're not stupid enough to think the police will solve this. Maya kept her voice steady. Who are you? The woman tilted her head as if deciding whether to answer. Friend of someone who doesn't want to see you end up like Kovac. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in a bar napkin. Maya's stomach tightened. She could tell by the weight and shape before it was unwrapped. A USB drive, black, unmarked. This was in his pocket when he hit the floor, the woman said. The knife made sure he couldn't deliver it. Maya didn't move to take it. Why give it to me? Because you were the last person he talked to before he bled out. Which means, whether you like it or not, you're part of this now. The woman glanced toward the street nerves flickering across her face. Inside that drive is why he was in Los Angeles. Don't plug it in at home. Don't plug it in at work. And if anyone asks, you've never seen me. She pressed the napkin-wrapped drive into Maya's hand and stepped back. By the time Maya looked up from it, the woman was gone, vanished into the deeper shadow between buildings. Her phone buzzed again. This time a single text from an unknown number. They know you have it. Somewhere behind her, a bottle shattered on the pavement. Maya turned and saw two men at the mouth of the alley, walking in slow, deliberate steps. And just like that, she realized the Monarch had been a trap from the start. The last run. The two men at the mouth of the alley moved like they owned the ground under their feet, slow enough to show they weren't afraid, steady enough to make every step a warning. One of them spoke without raising his voice. Hand it over, Ms. Delgado. Maya's fingers tightened around the USB drive hidden in the napkin. I don't know what you're talking about. The taller man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll take it off your body. Her pulse snapped into high gear. Behind her, the alley ended at a locked chain-link gate. Ahead, two armed men closing in. Maya pivoted and ran not toward them, but up. Her foot hit a milk crate. Her hands caught the edge of a dumpster lid, and she scrambled to the fire escape ladder bolted to the wall. A shout. Footsteps pounding after her. She hauled herself up the rungs, the metal groaning under her weight. Below, one man jumped, catching the ladder. The other sprinted around toward the front of the building. She cleared the first landing and bolted across the rusted metal walkway. Neon from the Monarch sign painted her in pink and blue, turning the world into a fever dream. Her breath burned, but the drive in her pocket felt heavier than the air in her lungs. A door opened ahead, the second man cutting her off. She skidded to a stop. Behind her, the first was climbing fast. No way out except down. She vaulted the railing. 3 stories of air swallowed her scream before she hit the dumpster below with a bone-jarring crash. Pain exploded up her side, but she rolled to her feet and kept moving, disappearing into a side street. Downtown was alive with Friday night chaos. Horns, sirens, the bass of club music spilling onto the sidewalks. Perfect cover, if she moved fast. She ducked into a parking garage, weaving between cars, until she found a concrete pillar to lean against. Her hands shook as she pulled the drive from her pocket. Destroy it and maybe save herself. Keep it and maybe end up like Kovac. A distant shout echoed through the garage. They were close. She spotted a delivery truck idling near the exit. The driver stepped out for a smoke, leaving the door open. Without thinking, she slipped inside, crouched low in the passenger footwell. The truck rolled out into the street, carrying her, and the drive away from the Monarch. Through the small side mirror, she saw the 2 men burst from the garage entrance, scanning the street like hounds without a scent. She wasn't safe. Not yet. But she still had the drive. And if what was on it was worth killing for, it might be the only thing that could turn this entire case upside down.